Hello, welcome or welcome back to Sapling Tarot. My name is Imogen. Today I'm going to be doing the occult tea tag, a discussion about the witchcraft community and social media. I wasn't going to film a response to this tag. I'm a tiny channel, very new, and my channel is primarily tarot content. I do kind of one vaguely witchy video a month, but then I watched all three of the original creators' videos and a handful of other ones, and I realised that despite being kind of a fledgling creator, I do have opinions. I have already filmed this video. This is my first attempt on this channel at doing a kind of talking heads type thing, and I filmed it yesterday and had an hour and 15 minutes worth of footage because I can waffle and I am going to try and keep this shorter. And I hadn't turned my mic on, so I have 75 minutes worth of footage of me gesticulating wildly and getting really animated, and you can hear nothing of what I'm saying. So we're going to try it again today. Hopefully I will be more succinct. I'm not going to answer all of the questions because I don't have thoughts particularly about all of the topics. Or if I do, they're absolutely nothing kind of novel or new or hasn't been said before. So yeah, be kind, please. This is my first, hopefully successful talking head video. Usually I'm kind of hands and decks and stuff. But yeah, okay. So I should introduce myself. My name is Imogen. My channel is Sapling Tarot. I am primarily a tarot channel. I've been making videos for nearly 6 months. I think this is like my 20th video or something. So I'm very new to contributing to the space. But I have been watching WitchTube and TarotTube for a good number of years now, and I've been practicing tarot certainly for, getting on for 15 years, and witchcraft. I didn't twig that what I was doing was like witchcraft and stuff until more recently. But I'd say I've kind of been on this sort of witchy path for, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years or so, maybe more. I'm not entirely sure. What practices and topics do I discuss? Primarily tarot and my own kind of version of magic and witchcraft and all of that sort of stuff. My personal reason or inspiration behind sharing my practice online is initially the idea was that this would be kind of like a part of my like business social media strategy for doing like professional tarot readings. And if you know me personally, you'll know that that isn't really a good enough reason for me to do anything like for money or for business reasons. I'm not great at having that be a motivating factor. And so what really got me to actually join in, and this will make my content make more sense, is that I wanted to be part of the community. All of the tag videos that I'd watched over the years, I'd written down in tarot journals and answered all the questions myself, but never contributed in kind of like filming a video response like I am now. So I'd have all of these thoughts and all of these opinions and things I wanted to share and discuss with people, and I just never did. So the reason that I started actually bothering to kind of film, edit, and upload content was to be a part of the community. I'm here to learn. I'm here to connect. I suppose in a way I'm sort of here to educate, but only in the sense of it shows people how I do tarot. I'm not saying that this is like how to do tarot or how to do witchcraft. This is just how I do it. And it's through my very specific lens, and what works for my life. So anything that I share here is very much with the caveat of this is what works for me, this may not work for you. So one of the things that I like when I was watching other people's videos, I really wanted to touch on is this question, which is consuming witchcraft content becoming a substitute for practice? And all of the responses that I watched were pretty consistent in saying that yes, it was. And they generally said that as if it was a negative thing. And I understand that most of us learn through doing, and that there are parts of witchcraft and tarot and all of these sorts of kind of like more esoteric things that you learn through trial and error. You learn it through having a go and, fuck around and find out and all of that kind of good stuff. However, no one could really explain, well, no one did explain in any of their videos why kind of armchair witchcraft was a bad thing. And I just wanted to raise the question of why not? Most of us weren't born with the information that we have now. We live in an age of unbelievable and unprecedented access to information. And I'm sure there are absolutely some people who have purely intuitive practices that one day they picked up a tarot deck because they felt called to, and they've read the cards intuitively, and they've never read a book, and they've never asked anyone, and they've never gone to learn about the history of tarot or any of that kind of stuff. And that is absolutely fine. Absolutely not taking away from that. A lot of us spend a lot of time researching these kinds of things, and consuming content can be part of that research. I think that, there have been so many occultists throughout the years who have been sort of primarily academics. And so to say that consuming content and learning about something isn't sort of part of a practice, I think kind of misses a bit of a point. And also, any of us that can practice physically, so doing spell work or tarot readings and be open about it in our lives and stuff like that, is a privilege. Lots of people, even within the community online, are people who struggle with energy levels and physical abilities and time and finances and stuff that hinder our capacity to practice in a more physical way. Lots of people have children, lots of people have full-time jobs and stuff, and so if the way that people connect with their practice is by watching WitchTube on their commute, or when they're getting ready for bed, or while they're doing the ironing or whatever, when they can't do other stuff, then I don't really begrudge people that. Also, like the physical act of practice and craft isn't like necessary all of the time. Like, I'm not gonna, or am I? Maybe I am gonna say that being a witch or a practitioner or an occultist is sort of, it's partly like a state of being and a state of mind. And I don't think that dictating that someone is more or less of a thing because of the opportunities that they have to practice something is really the way to go. Because, we have trends, like all things, and like particularly with social media. So I'm thinking like off the top of my head, like TarotTube has, you know, a lot of time for shadow work, and shadow work is really useful, and it can be a really great kind of addition to other kinds of like mental health care and self-reflection and introspection, and all of these things that can help us show up in the world, and show up for our communities and things. But not everyone is in a place where it's safe for them to be doing that kind of work. Not everyone needs to be doing that kind of work all of the time. Sometimes you can just whack out a tarot deck and, you know, like that book Divine Your Dinner, or do something really kind of simple and silly, and that is fine. You don't have to be doing like heavy hitting spell work or ceremonial magic or whatever all the time to be a tarot reader, in my opinion. So I'm just asking the question, like, what's wrong with armchair witchcraft? The next section is influencer authenticity. And, you know, I'm only a tiny creator, so I don't think anyone is really thinking that I'm here with like massive production value and stuff. And so I don't think there's any question about the level of sort of authenticity here. But the moment you turn on a camera, you know, I'm not sitting in a kind of natural position now, sitting facing a camera with notes and stuff. Like, I wouldn't be doing this unless I was publishing a video. And so everything is staged to an extent. Some of the posts I put online are kind of 50-50 cards that I've picked out and I'm sharing a photo of to share with people, and then the rest of them are photos from like my normal life. But the moment you have a camera on, it changes a little bit. You know, it's like observer bias in research and studies and things. So it's like, you know, I'm sitting up straighter, I'm trying to speak more slowly, trying to speak in full sentences, trying to not, you know, kind of disappear off down side quests and tangents and whatnot. So everything is curated and contrived to an extent, because that's the nature of social media, but also of all media and how we present ourselves ever. You know, in the neurodivergent community, we're a little bit more aware of this concept of masking. And I think there can be a bit of a misconception around this idea of masking, because some people will think of it as lying. So if I turn up somewhere and I'm masking, I'm not lying. It's still me. It's still a version of me, but it's like going to a job interview wearing a suit and tie rather than your pajamas. Like, it's an element of kind of social conformity and etiquette and self-preservation. You know, it would be vulnerable and, you know, inappropriate to turn up to a job interview in your pajamas. And so we don't condemn people for that. And so I think that we should hold a bit, or give each other a bit of grace in terms of what's authentic and honest and what keeps us safe. I also think that there's been some instances where people have been accused of like lying because they've changed their mind about something. And I think that, you know, changing your mind, taking on new information and changing your mind accordingly is one of the best things about being human, and it is what creates progress. And so it's not lying, it's not being inauthentic, it's not being dishonest, it's being human, to adapt and change and evolve, and to share that with the world in the way that we do with social media is really vulnerable. And so I think we need to be graceful with each other around that kind of thing. also because I'm such a small channel, I don't need to worry about these things so much yet. So like if you've watched any of my videos, I'd have done a couple of like live tarot readings in the sense of I've done them and I've recorded them as I've done them. So they're not like live, but it's a real tarot reading that I've recorded about myself. And so I've ended up disclosing some stuff that I wouldn't have maybe intended to put online. They're quite personal. The cards have given out to me a handful of times. And I need to sort of like keep assessing how I feel about that in terms of going forward, because my sensible brain says you shouldn't be putting this shit online, and my kind of mischievous, we're all in this together part of my brain is like, but people need to see this, and if I want people to be vulnerable with me by, you know, having a reading or whatever, then it's good if I can offer up some vulnerability to match that as well. And it's a really good example of the kind of stuff that can come up in a reading, whether you want it to or not. So the next topic is like misinformation. And again, a lot of the responses that I watched were talking about the importance of critical thinking. And some people were more generous than others about this in terms of the kind of the language they used. And I've seen this quite a lot in, so like outside of the witchcraft community and thinking about sort of like scams and stuff. People are really quick to judge, but we don't know what we don't know. Most of us weren't born with critical thinking skills, and most of us weren't taught them either. So if we have them, it's because we've had the opportunity to kind of cobble them together, or we're one of the very few privileged people who had that covered in school ever. I was watching A Coven of Two, which is now Activist Witch, video about critical thinking with their partner, and their spouse was talking about doing, like, learning about verifying sources in history at school. And that was where I first heard about the ideas of, you know, like primary sources, secondary sources, how do you verify what's a reliable source, and all of that kind of stuff. But like most people haven't been taught that. And it's the same to be said for like media literacy and social media literacy. And so I have links to a bunch of videos that, if you're interested in critical thinking, and maybe you've watched some of these other occult tea videos and people have said like how important critical thinking is, but you don't know what that is, or you feel like you need a refresher, or you could do with like upping your skills. Last October, a bunch of creators made videos for Thinktober, and it was largely about critical thinking in the witchcraft community. And lots of people had loads of great tips and examples, and I'm going to link a handful of them below. I'm also going to link another video about media literacy and social media literacy more specifically, because I think that it's something that we all need to give each other a bit more space for, and like not tell each other to like stop being stupid or whatever for believing things that aren't true, because researching and fact checking is hard. I know, you know, we all have, if you have access to this, you have access to Google, but there's so much misinformation out there because there's so much nuance to witchcraft and magic and the history of magic and who wrote about magic and stuff like that. And the first 20 links on Google could all be the same piece of information that each article got from the previous article with no sources. So like one that I think of quite often is, personally, I don't know where the idea that rosemary is like the universal substitute herb, like akin to a white candle. I don't know where that comes from personally. And if you know, please let me know in the comments. But you'll read that in loads of places, and they won't necessarily reference a source. And it's perfectly possible, with the wonders of the internet, is that each one of those people just got it from each other, and it's like this self-perpetuating myth. And in that instance, that's not harmful, because rosemary is widely available, it's safe to eat, it's safe to burn, it's all of these things, it's fine. But then you get on to other things, so like things that aren't safe to eat, things that aren't safe to burn, things that aren't safe for the environment, go burying or throwing into rivers or whatever. And then also things like people suggesting that you put crystals in your water bottle when half the crystals that are widely available will start to dissolve in your water, and like that's less good. And so people forget that magic and science are kind of the same thing. Like magic is science we don't understand yet. Science is magic that's more socially acceptable, and that's been like peer reviewed and whatnot. And speaking of peer review, when you're vetting sources, it is also worth, and I'm really not trying to muddy the waters here. I am just asking the questions. Think about who historically has been allowed into academic institutions. A lot of the famous occultists of bygone years that have contributed to written records, and written records are, certainly in my society of white British Western colonial world, written sources are put above all other traditions, rightly or wrongly, probably wrongly. But like, who was able to write stuff down? Who had the time? Who had the opportunities? Who had the funding? Are they all kind of the same group of people? Yeah. And so like, it's also worth considering alternate viewpoints as well. So like, I've been doing for the past couple of years herbalism studies, and it took quite a lot of unlearning for me to consider herbal medicine as valid as like hospital medicine, because of the way I was brought up to believe that in the scientific method and empirical evidence and peer review and all of these things. And a lot of herbal medicine wisdom comes from places that and communities that have been largely like discredited, and so this stuff has come down through generations and generations and generations, and has worked for people through generations and generations and generations. And we need to hold both of these things as valid as at once. I don't know if I'm making total sense, but yeah, critical thinking is hard. And if you're asking the questions, if you're just approaching things from a that's really interesting if that's true kind of perspective, rather than just taking on everything as fact immediately, you're doing great. It's really hard. We're all exhausted. We're trying our best. It gets easier in time. You build up those muscles of like how to question and what to question. And I suppose my main questions that I ask are, if I'm wrong, if I believe this and I'm wrong, who or what does it hurt? The environment, people, cultures, etc. Is it respectful of the environment, of cultures, etc.? Do I know where this came from? Who profits from this if I believe this? Which is dicey, that's a difficult question, but it's worth asking. And yeah, kind of checking in with your gut, like, does it feel right to me? And then you can pursue and you can do your research if you have time and capacity and stuff, but just, yeah, it's not as simple as being like, don't be stupid. It's really hard. So yeah, that's my little spiel about misinformation. Um, Also, so still on this topic, we've got how does a large following impact the perception of the creator? Does this immediately make them an expert, or are there other assumptions as to why they may have a large following? So the reason that we, against our better judgment, tend to respect people with bigger social media followings is this idea of social proof. If someone has 3.5 million subscribers or followers or whatever, to like a small bit of our brain, that's like, well, 3.5 people have signed off on this person. They've gotten, yes, this person's fine and good. And rationally, we know that 3.5 million people can be wrong about something. You know, people, there have been cults, there have been religions. You know, 3.5 million people signing off on something does not make it infallible. We know this rationally. There is a small bit of our brain that still goes, 3.5 million people signed off on this thing, therefore it's safe and it's good and it's correct. And it is about like balancing those feelings. Algorithms and viewership are broadly drawn to people who conform to the idealized standards of beauty and attractiveness as well. So that's like people who are thinner, people who are whiter, people who are more visibly able, people who, you know, are more kind of like native English speaking sounding, people who are more kind of gender conforming, often particularly for like femme presenting people, people who are younger. You know, all of these different intersections of privilege. And then beyond that, you've got people who have access to better equipment, nicer backgrounds, more tools and kind of flashy things to show you, and algorithms will push content that's trying to make you buy something as well. So someone just sitting and talking about their opinions, particularly if they are in any way off the beaten path, is like not as profitable. And you know, you see that for witchcraft content creators where this is their full-time gig, they make so much less money than say their like beauty guru counterpart, because the kind of ads that YouTube can show a consumer of witchcraft content are quite different from, you know, the Chanel's and Dior's who are paying for ad space on like beauty YouTube. And that's just an example. So these are all just things that we need to keep in mind. So I think we know rationally that having a bigger following doesn't make you more of an expert about something, because there are going to be experts all over the world that know so much more than any of us about things that don't have a channel or don't have an Instagram account, and that doesn't take anything away from their knowledge. So the opposite has to be true as well. Okay, so the topic 3 is imposter syndrome and FOMO. I really thought I'd be fast at this time. I'm not even doing all the questions, but okay, half an hour. When I follow other creators in the community space, does it make me feel genuinely inspired and empowered, or does it create feelings of fear of missing out, FOMO, and being less than? This is where like my perspective is a little bit different. I think not from everyone's. I'm not being like special snowflake over here, but like I am disabled. You know, financially things have been pretty tricky. Like most of my life, you know, I'm really really lucky in loads and loads of ways, but like in terms of the massive disposable income to ever keep up with anything, I've never really been in a position where that's been a possibility. And this isn't like a boohoo poor me. Like, you know, I'm immensely privileged in lots and lots of ways. That's just the reality. I've been in my house pretty consistently for years and years and years, and I've built up a tolerance to missing out. there is a benefit as well to coming to these sorts of things in communities later in life. I mean, not later in life, but just when you're a bit older, when you're not a teen, when you're not so maybe desperate to fit into something. It's easier to not get swept up in thinking, you know, if I buy this thing, then it will make me belong, or if I do this thing, it will make me belong. I know at points, like when I've struggled with like really, really severe depression, had I had the money, I probably would have. And I mean, this is getting on to the next thing. It's like, has it ever left you feeling vulnerable to being taken advantage of financially? Potentially, if I had had financial resources to spend like £2,500 on a course that said that it was going to like fix my brain or whatever, I may well have done it. I've simply never been in a position where that was possible. So, you know, silver linings and all that. Yeah, so it's that benefit of like knowing yourself and knowing that things are never that simple, that buying that new thing isn't going to change your life ever. And that like none of these things are ever worth putting yourself in a dicey financial situation for. Yeah, so when practicing my craft, do I find myself comparing what I do to what I've been seeing people do online? Again, this is, oh, I hate being this person because I hated these people when I was a teenager, but like it gets easier with age, I think. I see witchcraft the way I see journaling. I've always wanted to be the kind of person with like the most beautiful art journal, and you know, or the slickest bullet journal, or something like that. Like I'm quite a creative, artsy fartsy person. I love a list and stuff, so they feel like things that I should be able to do. They aren't. I've learnt my brain, and I've learnt how my brain operates, and I know that I don't need any additional barriers to doing things. So my journals are really scruffy and scrappy, and my witchcraft is exactly the same. If I had to go through a whole rigmarole of, you know, really, really setting the mood and the costuming and the lighting and the candles and the incense and all of that kind of stuff, I would never do it. And I mean, this is part of why I don't really share an awful lot of my practice online, because it's so low key. It's so scruffy. It's not half-assed, but like it has zero visual appeal. And so when I see other people's practices that maybe look more beautiful, more ceremonial, more this, more that, more the other, I think of it like when I see people's really beautiful art journals is amazing. I'm really happy for you. I'm happy for me that I get to witness this. What a joy, what a privilege. Couldn't be me. Could never be me. I have so little energy and so little like brain capacity for life in general that I do not need to make anything harder for myself. And the frills and the bells and the whistles and everything of it all makes it harder for me. So yeah, maybe I compare myself a little bit sometimes, but I'm fortunate in that I've learned enough about myself and my brain to be able to put that to bed pretty quickly. What would my practice look like without social media influence or other creators? Very similar. I would have different tarot decks. I didn't know about indie tarot decks before TarotTube, or even really vintage decks and stuff. So I think I knew about Little Red Tarot here in the UK, but I knew I couldn't afford any of them unless I did second sales. But yeah, so I would maybe have different tools, but otherwise everything would look the same. 4, capitalizing off community. Do I consider online communities as equally valid to in-person communities? Here we have my capital O opinions. Yes, I do. As a disabled person, I hate the whole, my opinion is such. But truly, as a disabled person who doesn't leave the fucking house, online communities are everything to me. All of my friends either are or began as online friends. The people that I've met online through Instagram and YouTube, I have so much more in common with them than anyone I've ever known because of proximity. I understand the points that people made about the difficulty of tangible support from online communities. Tangible support from in-person communities can also be non-existent. So yeah, I'm just here to toot the horn for internet community, online community, and the unbelievable power that that can have. Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the dangers of the current phenomenon of capitalizing off the witchcraft community? I mostly think of this in terms of like, so I have an Urban Outfitters tarot card bedspread that I bought years and years and years ago, and it's actually really good bedspread, but I don't think they make them like that anymore. God, I sound so old. Okay, small interruption, and I've completely forgotten where I was. So yeah, like mostly I'm thinking about big companies capitalizing off us, and you know, kind of witchcraft being like a look and a trend and an aesthetic. And it sort of ends up resulting in like just massive oversaturation of piss poor products that are rooted in exploitation of people and resources and the environment. And yeah, it's just a bit pants, really. The only thing is that I suppose that it has perhaps opened up more opportunities for small witchy businesses, that more people are interested in buying these kinds of things. I would say that the best way to avoid buying kind of mass produced tat is like try and make stuff yourself, or to make stuff with a friend, or buy things from your friends in your community and stuff, rather than the equivalent of like fast fashion, fast homewares, witchy stuff. And I'm not immune from it. Like I said, I have the bedspread and shit. I wouldn't do that now. Once you know better, you have to try and do better. And yeah, so that's. I also think it's a shame because it's like historically, like a lot of us are outsiders, and so it just always feels a little bit gross. It's like the kind of pink washing and green washing things of corporate pride and all of that kind of stuff, just trying to make a quick buck off people on the fringes, and that sucks. Should there be paywalled communities and online courses? Yes, for a number of reasons. I think that from a safety perspective, I completely understand why some creators want to put their work behind paywalls, work that would largely be censored. I also think that being able to have like an ownership of your audience outside of the social media machine is really important. Like, as we've seen increasingly recently, people being massively censored and massively deplatformed for having like basic humanity, and it to lose that and have your livelihood in the hands of these big like tech giants and stuff is really terrifying. And so I don't begrudge people for putting their content behind paywalls, or charging for their labor, quite frankly. We live in a capitalist society, and we're all just trying to make ends meet, and we're all exhausted and we deserve to be paid for our labor adequately. The only kind of counterpoint to that I have is, again, the thing that we are like a community that's made up largely of like historically marginalized people, Well, certainly like my view of witchcraft is, and I'll touch on this at the end, but like I think of this as a community of outsiders for outsiders, and um, so a lot of that, being an outsider comes at financial cost, and so a lot of people are priced out of paywalled communities and courses and education and things like that, and I think that that's really shit. And I think where we can, we all need to be thinking outside the box in terms of kind of like the capitalist mindset and thinking about what kind of mutual aid we can offer, what kind of sliding scale we can offer, what, kind of pay it forward systems can we do, and sort of like ways that we can think around the problem. I think that that's something that the community as a whole could do with considering more. And then how does one ensure the authenticity of courses, workshops, memberships, etc. as a financial investment? My answer is you can't. Much like any course anywhere, but I suppose particularly because there aren't standardizing kind of bodies in witchcraft and occult spaces and tarot. What I mean, I do have a tarot diploma, but like the fuck is that? Who are they to teach and to give me a certificate and all of this kind of stuff? Like it makes, and I'm a master herbalist and all of this kind of stuff, but you're like, what does that even mean? So, but like people go to university and find that course fucking useless. And sometimes it is like about the networking opportunities and, the friends you made along the way and stuff. And so it's like, what is value? And so like the financial investment thing is really hard. And so it's like, just don't ever put yourself in a difficult financial situation for it. Unlike traditional education where people are horrifically in debt because of it for sometimes no discernible benefit. So yeah, I don't think you can. I mean, you can look for the social proof. You can ask people who've done it before. You can ask for free trials or low cost trials, or if they have like low income options, or if you can be given sample packs, or ask for testimonials from other people who've done the course. And so you can look for that kind of stuff. But then also there is an inherent risk in all of these things. And I don't really think there's any getting away from that. And so it's just really important to not get swept up, or to try your best to not get swept up in thinking that this will be like the one course to rule them all and stuff. So finally, the conclusions. What are some topics of conversation I'd like to see more of in our community? I would like to see more people lifting up other creators and other opinions. I would like to see more people referencing their sources or saying if things are just their personal opinion. But largely, I just like people to keep doing what they're doing. I think it's amazing that we can have these conversations. I think the community at large is fucking brilliant. I feel really lucky to be even a teeny weeny part of it. I'm so grateful for the people that I've met through it. Just like gushing. The final thing is like, how can we help each other in removing the external peer pressure and grow in community, which also links on to how can we as a community come together more with constructive criticism without it seeming shady or passive aggressive, and how can we do better when we do receive criticism and feedback. To that second point about it seeming shady or passive aggressive, I'm an autistic person. I have been misunderstood all of my life. It is one of the primary themes of my existence, and it never gets any more comfortable. And I say this as, either the person doing the speaking and the person doing the commenting. We have to remember that tone in comments is really hard to read, particularly, a lot of this community is English speaking. We cannot penalise people for English not being their first language, or for people who struggle with written English, or we cannot penalise people for the way that those messages come across. I think we generally have to assume the best in each other And I hate to be so love and light. It's really not my usual vibe, but it's really hard, and we're all having a shit time, and we just, as best we can, need to give each other a little bit more grace and patience. I think because we're all learning, and we didn't always know what we know now, and so we really shouldn't be rude to people who are just figuring this stuff out. We're all still figuring it out. I'm doing the politician thumb. This is me on my soapbox. Hashtag be kind. Uh, yeah, I think it's really easy with this stuff because so much of it is so linked with like spirituality, which can then, that's really deep stuff, and often, it comes with our heritage and our background and our family and things that we feel really, really protective of. Well, sometimes things are really hard won. If we were brought up one way and we've changed to being something else, that can feel so precious. Um, so if we feel criticized in these ways, it's really easy to slip straight into like being really defensive. And I respect that. I do. And also, some people on the internet are just fucking rude. But I think if we can all just try and like take a breath before jumping to being defensive, or take a breath before criticizing each other, if that's at all possible, I think that would just generally benefit all of us. um, and yeah, just remembering what it's like to be a beginner, remembering what it's like to be new, um, and to be experiencing all of this for the first time. Um, and yeah, so, work on critical thinking skills and media literacy and stuff as much as we can. And yeah, I think that's it. I think that's me. I think maybe this is a little bit shorter than the 75 minutes I did yesterday. Thanks for listening. I would be fascinated to have any feedback. I'll be watching more of these video responses. I think this is this is the good shit. This is the stuff that community is made of, is these kind of discussions. And yeah, I feel really lucky to be able to be a part of it. Thanks for watching, and I hope you're taking really good care of yourself. I'll hopefully catch you in the next one. Bye. Yeah, so capitalism giving us like piss poor products rooted in exploitation and oppression, like, of people and the environment and resources, and you get mass produced wank that is just like kind of shit. And sorry, I'm so distracted.